Alright, kind of a cold evening here in Kyoto, and I'm gonna do one of my infamous guerrilla styled videos as my buddy Carl Edwards from Street Shoot R on YouTube / website says. Anyways, so this video is dedicated to you, photography entrepreneur, someone who's crazy enough to take a risk in life, somebody who's crazy enough to attempt what hasn't been done before, somebody who has an insane idea that could help revolutionize photography, that can empower other people and essentially change the world, or in Steve Jobs says, in his words, put a dent in the universe. So the purpose of this video is going to be to talk about first principles. So one of my entrepreneurial heroes in life is Elon Musk, and he brought up this concept of first principle thinking, and I think it's very useful to think about. So essentially the concept of first principles is a physics / philosophical principle that goes all the way back to Aristotle. And the basic concept is asking whether things are physically possible or not. So what that means is, don't reason by analogy and don't look at the past, at what's been done before. If you're truly paving new ground, of course no one else has done it before, and of course everyone's going to think you're crazy. So for example, if you told somebody, I don't know, even 200 years ago that this thing called the internet would exist, people would have thought you were crazy. Or even if 20 years ago you would tell that, oh, you know, you could have something that's the size of a small brick that you could fit into your front pocket that could give you access to the entire history of mankind's knowledge and information in a matter of seconds, that also has a GPS device, that's also a video camera, that is also a supercomputer that is like 100 times stronger than what has sent man to Mars or to the moon, they would think you're crazy. And first principles thinking is very important for us as entrepreneurs because it challenges our preconceived notions of what's possible and allows us to dream. It allows us to be children again. It allows us to be unreasonable, allows us to attempt new things. For example, whenever you have a certain idea for photography, a business, or whatever in life, don't ask yourself whether it's been done before. And also try your best not to compare yourself with others or compare yourself with what's been done in the past, because you need to start off with a blank slate and just purely think about physics, atoms, whether something is physically possible in the real world. So for example, this is kind of a hilarious example. Let's say, you know, you're really into stamp collecting, and you're like, wow, my passion in life is to collect stamps, and I want to make a living from it. Now, you tell any quote-unquote reasonable person that you want to make a living from stamp collecting, of course everyone's going to be like, no, that's a horrible idea, you should not do that. But physically, it is physically possible to make a living through stamp collecting. For example, let's say you started a business where you started to create Louis Vuitton stamps and you sold each stamp for $100. You could actually probably make a living off. Actually, someone should take that idea. I actually think that's a decent good idea. And let's say you start this business and you make like $3,000 a month. I mean, that's enough to quote make a living in, you know, lots of America. Maybe not in San Francisco Bay Area, but let's say you're living in Michigan or something. That's more than enough for you to live on. Or let's say you started your modest stamp business selling limited edition Marvel superhero comic stamps, also a good idea, to collectors, and let's say you made like, I don't know, $1,000 a month. You could easily live in Saigon or Bangkok in that money. Sure, you wouldn't be like a king, but you could certainly make a living. So that's physically possible. That's why it's better to think about first principles thinking, is that like, rather than asking yourself, like looking at other quote-unquote successful stamp entrepreneurs, you just ask yourself, is this possible or not? And even in theory, it is possible to make $1 million a year selling stamps. In theory, right? Now, another question is whether something is probable or not. I don't think it's probable to make $1 million a year from selling stamps, but it's possible. Notice the difference, right? So this is why I think it's very important in entrepreneurship for you to not share your idea or ask for feedback from others. So when I say not share your idea, I don't mean to say like don't try to hide your idea, because I think honestly ideas are totally overrated. I mean, if Elon Musk was like, okay, I'm gonna start an electric car company and create superchargers all around America, like he could have told the idea to a million people, no one would have actually done it. Or say, oh, I'm gonna start a rocket company. So essentially the idea itself is actually not that important. What's more important is execution. What's more important is attempting to do it and, you know, trying to figure out some sort of probable way to increase your likelihood of success. And that's also another thing too, is that if you attempt to start a photography business or any sort of business, or you're doing some sort of entrepreneurial pursuit, you're not guaranteed success by any means. Even though you're the smartest person in the world with 10 Russian PhDs, you're not guaranteed success. However, I found in my experiences, the harder you work, the more effort you put into, and the more ingenuity you integrate, and the more innovative ideas you try, it increases your likelihood or your probability of success. So for example, let's say your dream is to make a living from your photography. And let's say, you know, your interests are the intersection of street photography, fashion, lifestyle, video, GoPro, photography, whatever. So let's say that's your passion. Your passion is to travel the world and see interesting people and do interesting things. Okay, so let's say that's your dream. Now, so the question we have to ask ourselves is, how can we increase the likelihood or the probability of your chances of success to make a living from your passion? My suggestion would be you got to hustle hard, and the more you hustle, the higher you could increase your likelihood of success. So to break down this idea, so you have this idea and this dream of being a world traveler, photographer, entrepreneur. If you have an idea, but you actually don't do anything, like you don't actually take action, your likelihood of success is at 0%, okay? Now, let's say, you know, you start a Facebook, you start an Instagram, you start a Snapchat, you start your own newsletter, you start your own blog, you start your own YouTube channel, and let's say every single day you put out one new YouTube video and one new blog post every single day for a year straight. That means 365 videos on YouTube and 365 blog posts, okay? Now, obviously, according to the laws of physics, you've increased your likelihood of success by a pretty large factor. I don't know what that number is, but let's say you've increased your chances of success up to, let's say, 25% after doing that for a year. I know, and once again, I don't want to use myself as an example because my experience can be different than yours. However, what I was able to do in my photography and my life story was, you know, I had this passion for street photography and I wanted to share this information with others. I didn't actually had any intention to make this my living or my career. So I just started a blog about it, and I made these YouTube videos, and actually I built on my blog for about a year, and it started to get popular and started to pick up steam and traction. And then I got made redundant from my job from the dot-com boom. And I was like, okay, can I make a living from doing the street photography thing? And, you know, obviously no one else has really made a living doing street photography before. So everyone else, I asked for feedback. I'm like, oh, dude, you know, should I try the street photography thing full time? Everyone's like, no, you're crazy. You're going to fail. You're so stupid. Like, you can't make street photography a career, blah, blah. You had to be a wedding photographer. And I was just like, okay, let me think about this. What is my worst case scenario? My worst case scenario was, you know, I'd probably had to move in back with my mom, which wasn't a horrible idea because I'm like, oh, I love her cooking and I love her. So I was like, all right, okay. And then, I don't know, maybe that I'd feel bad about myself that I failed. Or then I was thinking to myself, okay, I'd rather be on my deathbed, happy that I attempted to do something crazy like make a living from street photography than never have attempted it at all. Therefore, I was just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna give it a shot, and then worst case scenario I can move him back with my mom. So I started attempting. I was like, okay, how can I make money from my passion of street photography? And I just tried to do some basic business plan, like very basic. Like it's like whoever tells you that you need an MBA to create some sort of hyper specific business plan, I think they're telling you a bunch of rubbish. Just kind of use what seems like it makes sense to you. So for example, you know, I sat down, okay, you know, some people sell t-shirts. I'm like, okay, maybe I could sell t-shirts. Then I started doing the math. So I'm like, okay, let's say, and I was living in LA at the time, in West LA. I'm like, okay, I probably need, I don't know, let's say I need $36,000 a year to survive, which is like, you know, let's say $3,000 a month in LA. How many t-shirts do I have to sell to earn $3,600 a month? So let's say, you know, I'm selling one t-shirt, enough for one shirt, I make $10 of profit. Then I have to sell 36,000, oh sorry, I'm doing the maths wrong. I had to sell 360 shirts a month to make a living from street photography. Now I'm like, okay, you know, obviously it's possible to sell that many t-shirts a month, but I didn't think it was probable, meaning I'm like, you know, it's still pretty hard to sell clothing. And I'm like, I don't think that'll be really possible. And then I was like, okay, what else have I done in the past? And then I thought, oh, you know, I've done a street photography workshop in the past. The first workshop I ever did was actually in Beirut, Lebanon in 2011 or 2010 with my buddy Thomas Loitard. And yeah, it was really fun. And, you know, I had a passion for education, and, you know, I thought I was pretty good at teaching street photography. And so effectively what I thought was, okay, let me do the math. Let's say I charge like, I don't know, $200-300 a person. And let's say I get 10 people to sign up. That's like $2,000 to $3,000. I'm like, okay, that actually, I could swing that. You know, I could do, let's say, one workshop every single weekend. And even if I didn't get that many students each workshop, I could probably scrounge a profit of $2,000 to $3,000 a month. So now suddenly my dreams seemed a lot more reasonable to make my passion into my living. And that's actually another piece of advice I would give you as well, is that when you're starting off as an entrepreneur, the purpose isn't to become a millionaire or a billionaire, whatever. The purpose is to just make a living from what you're passionate about. And there's a difference between making a living and making a killing. Making a killing is making a shitload of money. Making a living is essentially enough money to cover your monthly living expenses. And so there's different ways to make a living as a photographer or as an entrepreneur. Things to consider and think about, for example, what are your monthly expenses and how can you reduce your monthly expenses? Because the more you could reduce your monthly expenses, the less it's going to cost you to earn a living. And also, if you want to increase I'm just totally getting off topic, but you need to be a profitable photographer. And profit is very simple formula. It is income minus expenses. So in order to become more profitable, you either have to increase your income or reduce your expenses. I found in my personal experiences, and I think this is probably a fact of life, it's actually easier to cut your expenses than to increase your income, because if you're trying to increase your income, you're essentially dependent on other people because you have to convince other people to give you money, which is really hard. And you could once again be the most convincing, smartest person in the room with the most skills, but you need a little bit of luck to do that. However, lowering your lifestyle, lowering your expenses, not buying certain things you might not need to survive, this is something that you can instantly do without the approval or the necessity of other people's opinions. So for example, some practical ways you could do to lower your expenses as a human being. You know, get rid of your car, or, you know, sell your car, or stop making expensive payments on it. And instead, you know, take public transportation. Another one is just eat out less often. Another one is, you know, this is really hard for me, but stop going to expensive hipster coffee shops. Another idea is move in back with your parents, move into a cheaper neighborhood, rent out a room in your house, or to move into some other apartment and then share a room with somebody else. Another good idea, and this is good as if you're single or if you're you don't have any dependents. I would actually recommend moving to Saigon. Saigon is like the best, hottest place for you to work as a photography entrepreneur because super fast, free Wi-Fi everywhere, food is good, people are friendly, weather is warm, and of course the coffee is really good and the cafes are on fleek, and also good for shooting street photography and traveling. And man, now I want to go back to Saigon. Anyways, so I'm totally getting off track. So you could also move to a country or a place or a city where it's just cheaper to live. And man, I still remember the first time I was in Saigon, I was in Hanoi and Saigon, I was like, dude, you get everything here. Like, do Westerners or Americans know how good you could have it living in Southeast Asia for like so much cheaper? Like, for example, when I was living in Hanoi, we just rented a studio apartment, a really brand new, nice spanking one, for only $400 US a month. And if you live more like a backpacker, I'm sure you could get by on way less, like even living in a hostel for like, I don't know, like less than $10 a day. I've heard Bangkok is really good. I mean, Hanoi is awesome too. I don't have that many experiences living outside the States, so I can't really speak too much about that, but definitely Saigon is an awesome place to be. And so, yeah, like that's another possibility, is that if you want to make a living from photography or any other entrepreneurial pursuit, figure out how you could live in a country that's a lot cheaper. So even now, me and Cindy, we're gonna, in a few months, live in Saigon for about 2 months. And yeah, it's just awesome because we're able to build our savings like crazy because the cost of living there is so much cheaper. So even though my income might not go up, or even though my income might go down, because my expenses are much lowered, it makes it a lot easier to make a living. And so once again, like always, I'm always getting off topic, sorry about that. But to think about first principles thinking as a photographer and a photographer entrepreneur, think about the things. Don't ask yourself whether it's probable or not. Ask yourself whether it's physically possible. So my suggestion for you to learn more about first principles thinking is Google Elon Musk first principles, or for you to even read Ashley Vance did a pretty good book on the life of Elon Musk to figure out all the risks he took as an entrepreneur and a little bit of behind his thinking. And also other entrepreneurs who I admire include Steve Jobs. Another guy to study is Jeff Bezos, who started Amazon. And at the time, people didn't buy stuff over the internet. They're like, what? You give your credit card to a website on the internet? No one would ever do that. And he also started off Amazon as a bookstore. And then at first people were like, no one's gonna buy books on the internet. Like, people need to pick up a book and smell the book and look at the books, blah, blah, blah. He built out Amazon. Of course, they became very profitable and successful selling books. And then they started selling and doing everything. And everyone's like, that's crazy. No one else is gonna be able to compete. Also to think about first principles thinking is when Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook and started to launch a company, people were like, oh, you remember MySpace. So the mistake people are making is that they're making an analogy of Facebook to MySpace. And the analogy is actually pretty similar, but it's not first principles thinking. First principles thinking is like, if you started a social network brand new in today's day and age, how would it be different and what would make it good? So Facebook's big thing was they created the news feed, and they also made it very easy to upload photos and tag your friends in it. So it became a viral success. And yeah, so even if you think about first principles thinking, I mean, in theory, you could build a new search engine that could compete with Google. Theoretically, it's possible. And also you could start your own social network that could overthrow Instagram, something I'm working on right now. And yeah, so once again, the nice thing also about first principles thinking is that it helps revive this childlike naivete within you, where you become more of a dreamer. You become to think of the impossible. Like, you remember when you're a kid, you're like, then people are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then you're like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to go to the moon. I want to be an engineer. I want to, change the world, I want to do X, Y, and Z. Everyone's like, yeah, that's awesome, you could do it. And then the older you get, no one ever asks you what is your dream in life, and you tell people now, like, you know, you're in your late 20s, the 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. People like, come on, okay, that's a nice idea, but you have to be practical and reasonable and blah blah. So now I'm just like, my philosophy is life is short, life is fleeting, we're all gonna die. It's the only thing that we share with one another. So I would call this like memento mori entrepreneurship, is that if you have a certain dream in life, you want to build something, you want to change the world, you want to make a dent in the universe, remember that you're going to die, and therefore don't let any fear of failure get in your way. Like, even another thing I'd recommend for you to watch is the Steve Jobs Stanford speech, where he tells, you know, the audience that when he found out he had cancer, it was probably the best thing that happened to him, because he realized his life was short, and that, you know, if you look into the face of death, suddenly all fears of failure, all fears of negative stigma, all fears of being judged kind of melt away, because it all kind of doesn't matter at the end of the day. And I didn't mention this before, but like, what is the definition of an entrepreneur? To me, the definition of an entrepreneur is somebody who's willing to take a risk to empower other humans, to empower humanity, and to make the world a better place, essentially. And yeah, I don't think you don't have to make a living at what you're passionate about, whatever, to be an entrepreneur. As long as you have the courage in your heart, you have the soul, you have the ambition to do something great with your life, and if you also have the courage and the confidence and the brazenness and the appetite to take risks in life, to do things, that's what makes you an entrepreneur. It's more of your attitude, it's more of your mindset, and it's more of your actions, the fact that you're actually attempting to do stuff. That's what makes you an entrepreneur. So to sum up this video, I just really want to give you some words of encouragement to, regardless of how crazy your idea might be, you know, realize the worst is probably moving back with your mom, and to know that your life is short. Do epic cool shit with your life. Also, if you want to learn more about photography and photography entrepreneurship, I'm doing this brand new course on udemy.com. It's on photography entrepreneurship, and essentially if you want to learn how to build a following, you want to learn how to monetize your passion, you want to learn practical and philosophical skills to do so, check out my course, Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Photography Entrepreneurship, in the description, link below. And yeah, don't let naysayers get to you. Believe in yourself, have confidence in yourself, and like my best friend Gandhi once said, be the change which you wish to see in the world. Peace out.